Cheerio, Charles. Is today's movie British? Forgive my ignorance. I was pretty young when Chariots of Fire came out, and I'm not all that familiar with the film.
Yes, it's a remarkable story about the British Olympic team, I think, in one of the important games, and it's quite convoluted. I don't remember all of it. There's no way. I mean, Joe Biden will probably say the next time he speaks that he was the inspiration for this movie.
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
for this version, Idiots of Fire, he is the inspiration.
right. This is really another masterpiece. Of each show, the poster gets better than the previous one, and it's starting at a very high level.
Thank you.
But
That's Kaizen, Charles. I'm striving for that each time, so thank you for saying so.
You're welcome, Goodman-san. Well, the thing that's really amazing, I'm not going to say who sent it to me, but I got something, an email that was laugh out loud funny, which had a picture of Joe Biden and he's holding a placard and he said, "Corn Pop helped me put out the Maui fires."
It's Newt Gingrich. It's funny. I guess as I'm getting older, I'm agreeing with Newt Gingrich more, but he was on a screed against Joe Biden about how embarrassing it was that he was in Maui talking about how he almost lost his Corvette. You got people looking for their kids. They don't care about that. Corvette's not even a big block, Charles. Who cares? Burn it up.
Well, but not to mention his cat. And actually, I think I sent it to you, but there was a Zero Hedge piece, and of course, I'm in a different time zone. Maybe I'm behind the news, but there was just a brutal takedown of some of the criticism of Joe Biden, including from one guy who I think became an internet sensation with his video criticism. He was like, "I don't give a fuck about your cat."
Yeah.
It's just on and on and on.
I mean, it was unbelievable. He showed up there. He really created more of a problem than anything else. You had sent me an article about the people waiting for him at the airport. They were not too excited. It was a lot of like, "F you, Joe." They were screaming.
No, it's FJB, F Joe Biden, etc. But really, and justifiably so. I mean, this is somebody who hasn't been able to read the room for a long time, but he's had, I believe, the major league assistance of the pundit of the news, the corporate-owned news media around the world, of academics around the world, of supposed thought leaders around the world, who I think in time, and it may be a short time, in time will be proven to be absolutely demented as Joe Biden. This man is an unprosecuted criminal thug. He works with multiple unprosecuted criminal thugs. He has been selling United States interests out for decades. He is a complete failure as president. He was probably a complete failure as vice president, but nobody could criticize Obama effectively in that frame, so he got off light. But this guy, everything he has touched as president has turned into ashes, not just shit, ashes from what we did in Afghanistan, which was shameless and shameful at the same time. I was just talking to people with military connections in Norway and in the UK, and each of them explained to me that it's true. They confirmed that our military commanders did not notify our NATO allies when we bugged out of Afghanistan. That's outrageous behavior.
Yeah. Dangerous.
To swan around the world acting like you're the leader of the free world. He's the leader of the flea world. It's nothing to do with and he's a dunce, and an unsympathetic dunce beyond that. I mean, he has no manners. He obviously, I would argue he's possibly even a psychopath, but I'm not a psychiatrist.
I think that's true, Charles. I think that's correct. Obviously, we're not mental health professionals, but I agree with you. Look, here's the flea circus. Joe Biden could run that.
Right, but to everything he does. Before we talk about the fire, think about East. I think it's pronounced Palestine, not Palestine, but East Palestine, in the middle of the country. There, he still had. I don't believe he's actually still visited that place.
Correct. He has not.
Right, and I don't think it should be the job. There are a lot of natural disasters, frankly, in a country as big as we are, with the climate as varied as it is, whether it's changing or not. It's varied. And through the course of a year, temperatures change, all sorts of conditions change. And we don't want the president to be in charge of visiting every natural and man-made disaster that happens during the course of 365 days in a year. That's ridiculous. We also shouldn't have Barack Obama, who definitely knows better, I believe, I hope he knows better, using this Maui fire as an excuse to try to raise money for whether it's his foundation or the Red Cross or somebody else. We should have, in the United States of America and in the richer countries, we should have fully transparent, actually audited charities at the ready to collect money in the event there are natural disasters, and certain to ensure that that money actually goes to the victims and not to the ghouls who definitely descend on most disasters around the world. In some cases, doing appeals for money and just stealing 100% of the money. In other cases, using disaster relief as an excuse to fund political campaigns, or I suspect black budgets of off-the-books operations involving our deep state and other nations with deep states. I mean, this is just, we had an expression at Harvard Business School that what you didn't want to be is in the top, I forget, it was the top bottom 5 or the bottom 10% of the class was carved out. It must have been bottom 5 every year. And to get, if you were asked to leave, it's because your grades were too low, and you were called hitting the screen. Joe Biden has incinerated the screen of politics. I mean, he is just think about what has he done correctly. I mean, you could put. Yeah, I don't even know if people would find it funny if we put together all the video or selected video of what we have on this unprosecuted crook. And he obviously doesn't feel shame, because if
That's
I had
the psychopath part. No empathy.
Right, yeah. If I had a performance this bad, I would just resign, and I would either move to I don't know, Sitka, Alaska, or someplace that's tough to get to.
That's too nice,
right? And I wouldn't write a presidential memoir. But what are you going to write the memoir? 4 years of sucking. Is the title.
That is a great title for the Joe Biden. Charles, please write the unofficial Joe Biden, memoir and call it that. That's outrageously good.
We should maybe get into that business.
You've just reminded me. 4 years of sucking, 100 days of being a girl. Now, in addition to losing all of their sales, Anheuser-Busch, Bud Light, is under investigation by Congress, because I didn't realize this. Dylan Mulvaney, the audience is kids. And this whole thing, they're investigating not anything to do with transgender, but for advertising beer to kids. The hits keep coming for Anheuser-Busch.
Yeah, it's Anheuser-Busch, when I was working at Dillon Read, was one of the most important Dillon Read clients, because one of our very senior partners was a descendant of it. It was a Bush and on the board. And it was a powerhouse in 1981, 82 through the 90s. But it's really, it also sucks. It's probably, if Joe Biden were to drink, and I believe he doesn't drink anymore, probably just uses crack. But if he were to drink, he'd be drinking Bud Light. But he doesn't need to drink, because he wakes up naturally drunk on power and stuck on stupid.
Well, I think you need a brain to become drunk. Alcohol affects the neural pathways, but if you're completely empty in the head like Joe Biden, impervious to booze.
Exactly. Now, while we're kind of in the preview section, before we get into the stuff for paying customers, one thing to mention that's getting some play over here in the UK, even on the internet, is this idea now that the January 6th thing was much more of a setup than even we suspected. that apparently, and I sent you that thing about what the two Sullivan brothers and one turning on the other. I don't know if that's legitimate or not.
Oh, no, that's true. First of all, they're not biological brothers. They're both adopted. And what's the brother who's not John?
Is it James and John?
James has been against John from the beginning.
But we were both there. I'm glad we were there. I'm glad you did that video. I hope, especially people who haven't watched it so far, go back and watch literally all 5 hours of it. It would warm my heart. I mean, we couldn't make up for the cold on the day. I mean, that was probably one of the coldest periods of my recent life.
Really?
So freaking cold out there.
Huh. See, I was used to it, Charles, because I spent a month in Montana shooting Call of the Wild, where 14 degrees Fahrenheit was the warmest it was the whole time.
Right. I mean, I didn't complain. I'm just saying, I'm not complaining now, but I'm just pointing out that it was freaking cold. But
Totally.
when we walked around, at least I got the impression that we were witnessing, it was not dissimilar from the very peaceful Tea Party rallies that I happened on to in various parts of the Northeast. The crowd was largely, I mean, there wasn't a lot of trash thrown around. At the end of it, I don't believe there was that much trash on the ground. Yes, voices were raised, and yes, there were hotheads, but we have on tape, you caught on tape, Ray Epps, I believe.
Yeah.
And now there are deeper questions about how many people in that crowd were Antifa wearing Trump outfits, trying to create the impression of an insurrection so that they could take Trump and the movement out, which seems to be what has happened since January 6th. That seems to have been the effort. And I'm sorry, I don't like it when our CIA tries, as RFK alleges, to overthrow more than 80 governments around the world, but it is strictly forbidden for the FBI and the CIA to take out a political candidate. That said, of course, what happened to JFK. But it's just, I have to believe that the mass of voters across the political spectrum, forget the established parties, count the independents more robustly. The mass of American voters and Americans must not believe, in my opinion, that it's okay to do what it seems like has happened with January 6th and now to Trump, and particularly with the type of sentences that are being meted out to some of these people and the way some of these people were imprisoned and not given charges, put into rough situations. This is outrageous behavior, and it happened under Trump, right? Temporarily, but mostly under this moron who currently sometimes inhabits the White House. I mean, the precedent that is being set here in a country that claims that it leads the free world. I mean, I think that's stopped on, you could argue maybe it's stopped on January 6, 2020. I mean, think of the people, the petty despots around the world who are looking at this father of a crackhead get away with the amounts of money that he apparently may have stolen, the fact that he failed to declare this money on his income taxes as a guest, the fact that he's padding his family's pockets, he's got 2 mansions and all this kind of stuff. Think of the way petty despots around the world, where there is no rule of law, actually, in so many of these countries, just saying, listen, don't talk to me about LGBTQ and America's aspirations for my country. Fuck off. I'm busy stealing money. I got to steal the central bank next. Look what you guys are doing.
For that. Charles, another thing that was happening today, I think you brought this to my attention yesterday, but there's this giant BRICS meeting going on. And also India has landed a moon, some kind of probe on the moon. And so they are at the BRICS summit, and Prime Minister Modi has proposed a new space exploration consortium for shared research and weather monitoring. I find this pretty interesting, particularly given the extreme weather that we've been experiencing in Hawaii and California. There was also a statement from the Russian, I think, defense minister the other day, where he came out and said that the United States is planning another pandemic. Alex Jones has said that somebody, DHS whistleblower told him that lockdowns and mask mandates are coming back. Now we're seeing little news stories trickle out where this university is mandating the masks. Apparently Lionsgate Films, which has something to do with Frank Giustra, and did not buy the movie Julia X, even though they had given a $1.5 million minimum guarantee. That's a story for another day. Lionsgate has brought back mask mandates. It seems like it's coming back, Charles. I've noticed people around the city wearing the masks.
I highly doubt in this climate that the public will trust pronouncements from whether it's, I don't know, from any supposed expert on this topic, given what we know about the first one, which may have been the intent all along, to have a flawed response to the first one and then have the really harsh one come and have people say, you know what, I don't believe this, and then the death rate's really or who knows. But yeah, I noticed that the significance, I believe, of the Indian landing is that it landed on the in the Antarctic portion, the southern portion of the moon, I believe, which I don't believe we've done that. And Modi talking about the weather. I mean, if you could be very interested in the weather around the world, but with the exception of the Himalayan region, I think the weather report in India is typically it's going to be freaking hot today. I mean, it's mostly pretty hot in India. And on the subject of extreme weather, I take exception to that characterization, not by you, but by the people who are using it, because so far where I live in New York and where I'm traveling, the weather is unseasonably cool. And yes, I think there are many fires. I don't know if it's more or less than normal, but I would note that it's pretty easy for arsonists to set a wildfire, particularly in national parks and these large territories that we have across the United States and Canada. So I think we have climate hysteria, and every departure from a supposed recent norm over 100, 150 years gets us all wailing. In reality, the data I've looked at suggests the planet is in a cooling phase right now, which is expected. And moreover, there's a big thing happening, I believe, next week. There's some big major monster sunspot activity, which generally does affect weather, not just on Earth, but on Earth. So
wow.
I would take with a very large grain of salt these reports that we're in the middle of a climate emergency. And I certainly would not give Joe Dementia the power to, by executive order, impose a climate emergency and lockdowns for climate. That's ridiculous.
Well, I do have one other question, though, Charles. I don't know if you've seen any of this footage of this alleged, India lunar lander. It's a little strange to me. I'm not sure if they're showing us a simulation or if that's supposed to be the actual thing, but it looks remarkably crappy and sort of like this 1980s video game Atari lunar lander where just this little thing is landing on the moon. I think people are going to have questions about that.
Look, I question everything. I mean, that used to be the one of the hallmarks of the taglines of the hippie movement was question authority.
Right.
That's what all these boneheads who are now, they should be in retirement homes, but they're running the country, many of them, people who are 80 and up. That's how they came to political power, most of them, questioning authority. Now they are the authority and you can't question them.
Yeah. A lot of people have been commenting about that, how, the boomers who were the hippies are now these authoritarian maniacs. One other interesting thing that came up while you were telling us about RFK and his mention of the CIA's role in his uncle and his father's assassinations. I just put into Google RFK CIA overthrow government. Number one thing that comes up is an article posted by the CIA, written by someone named M. Holland, talking about the lie that linked the CIA to the Kennedy assassination. And then we go into all these other just mainstream. It's, Google is super manipulated, Charles. It seems like almost everything. Oh, here we go. Overwhelming evidence from RFK. So it's there, but they try to keep it from you.
Right. Which, shouldn't come as much of a shock, because the more as I age, the more I think about my life and experience trying to learn. Narratives were shaped beginning in primary school, nursery school. Narratives were shaped. Habits were set, preferences were established, and people were coached into doing things. by advertisers and by others, and by governments, some of which made no freaking sense at all. And so it shouldn't surprise us that they've limited the advent of Google and modern technology has destroyed, and other factors have destroyed local newspapers and many of the competing thought outlets, thought exchange mechanisms that were out there. And so our news is becoming homogenized and, frankly, fictionalized.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of stuff that was sold to us as concrete fact, you couldn't question. Biden's denial about his involvement with his family in Ukraine. It was off limits. I mean, moderators even on Fox, I think, shut Trump down when he tries to bring that up. But when you go into the actual timeline, it is becoming clearer and clearer to me that Joe Biden knew he was about to be exposed while Obama was still president. And he did his level best to use U.S. government resources to obstruct the urgently required investigation into what the hell he and Hunter and others were doing in Ukraine and in other places, using the power of his office, which is considerable, even though he's probably appropriately named as vice president. He's a corrupt second in command, Mr. Vice.
Right.
Washington, D.C.
Something you and I have spoken about, but not so much maybe on the show, and I'm starting to hear rumblings of this elsewhere. It does not seem plausible that, I think you and I share a similar opinion of Barack Obama. We're not so keen on his ethics, but he doesn't seem like a dumb person. And it's hard to imagine that he would not be aware that his vice president was doing all of this stuff. And if he wasn't aware, that's kind of equally bad. Maybe not equally bad, but a close second if you've got a criminal working for you and you don't even know it, right?
So as just a guess, I have no ambition to be a high-level elected official in the United States. But as a guess, once you are elected, formally elected, once the Electoral College ratifies or confirms the outcome, as a guess, the President of the United States gets a tap on the shoulder from somebody, and the incoming president is told, listen, here's some brutal realities, dude. Yeah, you're the president-elect. That's true. But, you see over that table over there, there's a gigantic pile of booklets. Do you see them? There are pictures, we have audio and video, we have a lot of stuff. And to run this government, it's not like you're going to go to the Resolute desk and start pushing buttons and shit's going to happen. You have to have hundreds, if not thousands of people confirmed through security clearances. And guess who controls that process? I do. I'm the head of the FBI. I'm the head. I control that. So, we can do this the easy way or the hard way.
Right.
And the easy way is we have a list of people we think would be very well suited to oversee the FBI and the CIA. They're called nobody.
Pick one. Yeah. Well, to run it, though, we know that he relied on Chris Christie. I meant to tell you this. I saw a thing that said that Barry Diller was giving large sums of money to Chris Christie. That's pretty interesting, obviously financing a Trump foil. And we've got just about a minute left, Charles, before we go over to the sponsor-exclusive segment in the First Amendment Forum. People can join us there on odyssey.com/@crowdsourcethetruth, crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com, and subscribestar.com, and patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. This is interesting along the lines of what you're saying now, and it ties into what you brought up earlier. This is an ABC affiliate, I'm not sure exactly where, but they're taking the story that you're talking about, which is James Sullivan telling people in the press that his brother was part of a subversive Antifa-aligned unit that disguised himself as a Trump supporter and pretended to be, somebody there for Stop the Steal or whatever, but he was actually an agitator. Interesting to see that ABC affiliate turns it into, this man turned on his own brother for his involvement in the Capitol insurrection, which they know most people will just read that headline and be, the takeaway is, oh, you see that? January 6th was so bad, this guy is going against his own brother. They're not going to read the details that he's exposing his brother as an infiltrator.
Yeah. Just quickly, if I can, I want to give a quick shout out to the good people at UK Column who were kind enough to host me in Plymouth several days, and who actually have a remarkable operation. It's very similar to our good friends up in Norway at document.no. But I would encourage our viewers to check out UK Column, check out their excellent work, check out the backgrounds of the people involved, and you'll be hearing more from us about them. And they were kind enough to tape about an hour and a half interview of me that'll go up, I think, in September, concerning the Clinton Foundation and charity fraud and the Bidens.
Excellent. And with that, Charles, we'll be back in just 5 minutes. People should stay with us. Join us for the sponsor-exclusive segment in the First Amendment Forum. There's a